Look at that, folks. My signed copy of Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. First edition. First edition. Signed copy, Gardens of the Moon. Oh yeah. Stuff just got real on this channel. Stuff just got heavy. Stuff just got real. I'm Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I've got a hardcover of every single one of the books in the series, the Malazan Book of the Fallen. 10-book series. Malazan Book of the Fallen. I've got first edition hardcovers of each. That one is signed. Got the paperbacks of all of them too. Just so you know. So I met Steven Erikson. It was quite a while ago, you know. It was right when Gardens of the Moon first came out. It was back in the day when I was doing Magic the Gathering cards, paintings. I used to, for some of you that have been following my channel, you know that I used to do a lot of illustrations for Dungeons and Dragons game, Tolkien Enterprises, Lucasfilm, and Magic the Gathering. And I used to go to a lot of the science fiction conventions and set up my art booths. And anyway, I got to meet a lot of the authors then. And I remember going to the 2004 World Fantasy Convention in Tempe, Arizona, where I met a lot of famous people. And like George R.R. Martin, Stephen Donaldson, Melanie Ron, Jennifer Robertson, Kate Elliott, Dennis McKiernan, Greg Keyes, Charles DeLint, Dave Farrell. I mean, there's so many people I met at that convention. David Coe. So many people I met at Don Mates, Donald M. Grant, the publisher of Stephen King. I met so many people at that convention. One of my favorite conventions I've been to. And it was Gardens of the Moon had only been out a few months, and I had read it. And I was like the only person at that convention that had really ever heard of Steven Erikson or read his stuff. And he was there at the convention promoting his new book. And I went up to him and I was like, hey man, will you sign it, right? Will you sign my book? I think this is fantastic. This is different than anything I've read before. This Gardens of the Moon. I knew that there must be sequels coming. I just didn't know how many. And so I sat down and talked to him for a little bit about plans of where, you know, the novels were previously published. I think he'd published maybe 3 or 4 of them in Great Britain already, and they were coming out slowly in the United States. And he's like, yeah, I plan on having the series be 10 books. And I was like, wow, man, that's like Wheel of Time type stuff, right? That's like epic scale Wheel of Time type fantasy series. And so I talked to him about his first book, The Gardens of the Moon here. Had a lovely conversation with the guy. That's the thing, is I've met a lot of these authors. Like even when I met George R.R. Martin the first time, back in '98 at the World Science Fiction Convention in San Antonio. It was just when Game of Thrones had been out for a little bit, and Clash of Kings was just coming out, and I got to spend some time with him too. Anyway, enough of me. I will name drop. If you've watched my channel long enough, you know I am not ashamed to name drop like I just will. I've met a lot of these people, and it's one of the perks of being a published writer. One of the great perks. But like I said at the beginning of this video, stuff just got real on my channel. I mean, stuff just got heavy. Because Malazan Book of the Fallen, Steven Erikson, this whole series, oh man. Where do you begin? Where do you begin? Where do you even begin? For those of you who have read it, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who've tried to read it, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who are thinking of reading it, you've probably already seen a lot of reviews where people are like, whoa, this Malazan Book of the Fallen is so insanely massive in scope and intensity that it's almost just overwhelming you. It's like sitting in front of, it's like when Michael J. Fox in Back to the Future plugs in his guitar to the amplifier that's the size of a house and strums it and just gets blown backwards into all the bookshelves. That's Malazan Book of the Fallen. When you open it up, it's like being in a windstorm at 10,000 miles per hour, where just, it's like your face is pulled back because everything is hitting you all at once, and it's absolute chaos, and you have no idea what the F is going on, and everything's just coming at you. Just, here's this character, here's this character, here's this castle, here's this scene, here's this battle, here's this stuff going on, and all of it just seems so effing cool, coming at you all at once, and you have no idea what's happening. You don't know what's going on. You're like, I gotta slow down, I gotta backtrack, I gotta figure out. And that is the brilliance of Malazan Book of the Fallen. That is the brilliance of the first book, Gardens of the Moon. That's the hook. That is the purpose, is to do something different in fantasy and do it 100%, 110%, just balls to the wall, over the top, take no prisoners, apologize for nothing, just do it. Just ratchet up the coolness to 11 and don't apologize. Just go for it. Put it all out on the page. Have trust the reader is smart enough to figure it out. And that's the thing. That's the thing. That's why this series is so controversial, is because we haven't even talked about this yet. We're just talking about in a general scope of a lot of people don't want to be challenged with what they're reading. And Malazan Book of the Fallen, especially Gardens of the Moon, because it's the first book in the series and people expect first books in the series to just ease them into the story. So everything makes sense, so everything is beautiful, so there's nothing to question, so everything is just laid out for you perfectly. And Steven Erikson doesn't approach it that way. Like I said, I showed you how he approached it, just everything thrown at you at the same time, and you've got to muddle through it. And that is part of the fun of reading it, is taking your time, absorbing it, slow down, take notes, follow every word. Trust me, you got to, because if you start daydreaming about what you're going to have, if you're reading this and you spend a couple pages thinking about where you're going to go for lunch. Hey, am I going to go to Taco Bell? Oh, Wendy's sounds a little better. Maybe Wendy's. Nah, let's try Olive Garden. No, you will lose track of the entire story. You'll just flat, you're gone, you're done. You got to backtrack. So let's talk about the Gardens of the Moon specifically. It starts out introducing us to fantasy characters unlike any that we have met before in any fantasy novel we have ever read. We're introduced to them, and we have to figure out who they are. The author's not going to tell us. Steven Erikson won't tell us. And again, that is part of the intrigue of this. That's part of the genius of it. Not only that, but the guy knows how to write. I've read each one of these twice. I'm rereading them now for a third time for my book review channel. And I'll probably get to one a month until because you need a good week. And I read through a book. Here's the thing: is I read about 100 pages an hour. And so if it's a 400-page novel, I can read it before I go to sleep at night. It'll take me 3.5, 4 hours. So I go through 3 or 4 books a week. When I sit down with a Steven Erikson book, I've got to go slower because I want to absorb the story. I need to soak it in. I need to slow myself down, figure things out as I go, pay attention, even in my third reading. I'm still muddling through the woods here. I'm still a little lost. And I still got to go slow. And it's a little easier the third time through, I'll be honest with you. It's a little easier the third time through. I remember the first time through, I was like, God, this is 10 parts confusing and 10 parts brilliance. And I was loving every minute of it just because it was such a challenge, right? And so we're getting introduced to all these characters and all these cool places. And we've got to figure it out on our own. We've got to figure out what everything is. I mean, you just do. I don't know how else to explain it other than to, you have to experience reading it to know what I'm talking about. And those of you that have experience reading it, you do know what I'm talking about. And that is the sheer brilliance of it. Is because once you do slow down and give yourself a chance, especially with my third reading, I just reread this. If you just take your time with this thing and read every word, there are snippets of dialogue that are just pure brilliance. There are snippets, there are bits of description and there are red herrings thrown out throughout the whole thing. And it's like, on my third read through this, I'm just like amazed at how this has been constructed. I was amazed the first time. But now, having written novels of my own, I'm even more super amazed. Not only at the guy's talent for just the grand, in the world building. Gosh. There is no other fantasy series out there with world building like this. I would say the Stormlight Archive compares, but it actually really doesn't. This is bigger. This is bigger than that. It's bigger than what I've done. It's bigger than George R.R. Martin. It's the biggest. It is the biggest fantasy world you will ever read. It has got the most dense world building you will ever read. But you got to pay attention to it. You really do. And the characters, we've got Whiskey Jack, we've got soldiers, we've got mages, we've got sorcerers, we've got assassins, we've got claws, we've got just everything. We've got witchcraft, we've got marionettes that talk, we've got magic that will slice you in half, we've got everything right there. And I'm just talking about the first 50 pages. Like I said, it's all just shoved at you like a tornado. Oh. If you've watched my 40 top fantasy series of all time, you know where this one ranks. It's in the top 10. For a reason. Gardens of the Moon, we start out in the middle of a worldwide battle. We've got all these different continents on this planet, and it's a worldwide battle, and we are thrust into one of the battles with Whiskey Jack, with Paran, with Sari, the little girl Sari, Whiskey Jack, Paran, Tattersail, Hairlock. I could keep going on with the names. Lassine. This is who we're first introduced to, right? And they're in the midst of a battle, and there's just crazy weird sorcery happening all around. There's death and mayhem. And then we jump about 250 pages in, we jump to this city full of all of these crooked, wicked, badass assassins and thieves, and they've got their own thing going on, and they're all super cool, and just reading about them running across the rooftops of the city and just all the intrigues that are going on. And then we got 150 pages, and then we're back to the battle with Whiskey Jack, and then we've got Anamander Rake, and we've got Quick Ben, and we've got the Claws, we've got all of these characters that I don't do spoilers, and I won't do spoilers. I just want to give you an overall sense for the first book, Gardens of the Moon. It might be my favorite in this series. I know people say that Gardens of the Moon is the weakest one, and I think they say that because it's the first introduction they have to Steven Erikson, and they're just like taken aback by how unbelievably different it is than anything else that you've ever read. And so you're taken aback by book one, and then by book two you're sort of in the flow of it, and then by book three. So a lot of people say, hey, Gardens of the Moon is the weakest of the series. No, it ain't. It's like a freaking solid first book. It really is. And the people are right. The other ones are awesome. But I kind of like Gardens of the Moon as one of my top three in the series. the introductory book. Especially after rereading the series now, and this is, like I said, I've read them all twice. I'm doing it a third time for these book reviews. And I'm finding just hidden gems that I hadn't noticed before, just within the book, and which makes sense when you get to all the other books. You find so many hidden little gems that it's crazy. It's crazy. I mean, I'm in awe of the guy. I am in awe of the guy. I know what it takes to build a really solid, dense fantasy world. And this guy has done it better than everyone else. And his prose is solid. I learn things when I read his prose. I learn. I'm a better writer for having. And a lot of my videos are a little bit of writing advice. If you want to learn, reading Steven Erikson's prose, the way he describes battles, characters, cities, landscapes, read the way he does it. Follow along with the way he does it. Notice the words he's using. Notice the way he's constructing his paragraphs and sentences. Take notes on that. It'll do you good. It'll really do you good, because he's the master at world building. Nobody has done it better. That's my writing advice for this bit of, Malazan, Gardens of the Moon. Like I said, stuff just got real on my channel. When people start reviewing Malazan Book of the Fallen, shit got real. Shit just got real, because this is heavy lifting. This is writing that's heavy lifting. But if you stick with it, it's going to be one of the most rewarding things you've done for yourself. It is that great. I mean, it is going to go down in the history of fantasy as one of the benchmark moments in the history of fantasy writing. Tolkien. There's going to be Tolkien. There's going to be, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter. In that group of 10 writers at the end of time that are mentioned, what were benchmarks in fantasy? The Malazan Book of the Fallen is going to be there because of, nothing since Dune. And it even surpasses Dune in so many ways. I know we didn't talk a lot of specifics about the Gardens of the Moon. I don't want to give away spoilers for those of you who have not read it. Or anything like that. When we get into some of the other further books, I will probably go into a little bit more detail on plot and stuff. And we'll probably end up doing some, like say I'm reviewing book 3, we'll probably in that review be giving spoilers for some of these other things. But, whatever, it is what it is. I just want to tell you people that Steven Erikson is one of the writers that I really do admire a lot for what he's done. And can I recommend this series to everybody? Probably not. Can I recommend it to people who love fantasy? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I recommend it to people who want to write epic fantasy? Oh, if you want to write epic fantasy, this is almost a must read. All of them. I mean, you gotta study what this guy does. You gotta study it. And maybe at some point when I've reviewed all of these, I will go back and do just a writing advice video based specifically off of Steven Erikson. Anyway, I don't want this video to go much longer. Just know that I give Gardens of the Moon a 9.5, 9.7.5. I mean, it is an almost perfect novel for what it is, for the things that it's trying to accomplish. And I met the guy, and I think it's cool. I hope you guys all give it a chance. I know many of you have. Gardens of the Moon, folks.